Welcome, everybody. We're going to try this at a new time to see if you can have an opportunity to talk some Texas football and maybe watch another football game that might be going on today. Speaking of football games, I think it's only appropriate that we do a nice little follow up to last week's topic du jour, and that was Ian Boyd's head coach and defensive coordinating position. You made it to the championship game, Ian. Can you let the fine people know how your flag football team did?
Not great. The championship game was, I think it would be fair to say that they had 3 or 4 kids as good as our best player. And they were a well-oiled machine.
Ian's already blaming his players, huh?
Blaming them. It's in there, right?
Learned nothing from Tom Herman, huh?
Fake backfield actions that we were chasing ghosts.
Okay.
We were not. I was like figuring out live and trying to tell our players what was going on so we could stop it.
Oh man, I need video of that.
We made them earn all of their drives except for one, but we could not score.
How many of the drives did you make them earn?
Well, they scored 28.
To say, what was the final score? Okay, all right.
It was 28-6. I think that's actually
okay.
A little. How did that add up? They scored like 4 touchdowns. Is that right? That has to be right. They didn't make all their conversions, so it gets hard to do the math. But
so Drew, I have to ask you this: just postseason, the season's over, final press conference of the year, and Mac is just throwing you guys under the bus. I mean, how are you going to respond in a situation like that?
I'd look at other options the next year.
Okay, yeah, all right. The transfer portal just opened, Ian.
I mean, that's especially when the parents hear about it. Especially at this.
Oh man,
everybody knew it was up. Everybody knew it was up.
So much so that is it true that you got awarded your second place medal before the game was even over?
Yeah. I was watching to see if we were going to avoid a goose egg on the sideline, and I was handed the runner-up medals, and then I was like, we score, and I look down, and it's like 9 to 10-year-old crossover runner-ups.
You brought great shame on Inside Texas, man.
You know what? None of y'all would have done better. I'll just say that.
That's okay. It's probably true. Well, I mean, speaking of press conferences, Eric, we obviously Sark had his today. This seemed a little bit different than his normal like Monday getting ready for a game, because this was obviously coming off of a bye week, and he had some updates on some players that we hear about a lot, and I'd love for you to talk about that.
Yeah, he was asked about which young players were standing out. He offered 5 names, I think it was. 2 of them were real points of interest for a lot of Texas fans. We get asked about inordinately amount of times. He started off with Kobe Black, which was no surprise. We just saw Kobe in his first real action. He had hit the field before, but he was actually getting real snaps in real time during a hotly contested football game. And he showed well. He only played 9 snaps, I believe, but he made a number of plays, including the pick 6 that was called back. So no surprise, we're hearing more about Kobe Black. The sky's the limit with him. They want him to keep, drop weight if possible, just because they view him as a pure corner long term. So everything's positive with him. He mentioned Jordan Johnson-Rebel and Xavier Filsaime. Obviously, Texas had some injuries at safety this season. Makuba's coming back, but Derek Williams is lost for the year. So that's opening up more potential playing time for one of the younger guys. Jordan Johnson-Rebel, we know, is ahead of Filsaime. But it sounds like he wants both those guys to start making a mark on special teams. Obviously, Texas has had some issues on special teams. Jarrett Gibson, I thought, was very interesting. Obviously, the running game needs a jolt. We have not seen much of Jarrett really since the Mississippi State game. I think he only has had 2 carries since the OU game. So that's obviously after playing. He had 13 against UTSA, 10 against Michigan. He looked like he was going to be a bit of a foundational player in the backfield. We haven't seen much of him. So maybe he's on his way to getting back on the field, which could potentially give the run game a jolt. And then Sadir Mitchell. I was not sure we were ever going to hear Sark mention Sadir Mitchell's name again. The last time we saw him was UTSA. He was supposed to play against ULM. It didn't happen, and we haven't seen him since. I don't think he's been out there since then. Sark actually mentioned him twice, once when talking about the young players that stood out, and then another time when talking about who's going to help make up for the loss of Vernon Broughton for the first half against Florida. So that seems promising. He said Sadir's had his consecutive back-to-back weeks of his best football probably in the time that he's been at Texas. So hopefully we see the big fella during this November stretch.
Drew, when in your experience, so a player is, and obviously we don't need to name names here, but like how hard is it to get out of the proverbial doghouse as in situations like this? Because it is pretty clear that Sadir kind of put himself in a really tough spot to come back from, and to be mentioned in this regard, I think is a pretty positive thing.
I mean, honestly, I think even Sark mentioned another player's story today, and Jahdae Barron. I think while Jahdae has been playing the last 3 years, if you really look at the players that we have coming in and know that they're going to have their own different development curves, we have to get comfortable with that. And so just because Sadir had not been playing, had not been contributing, especially during a time where we really needed DTs and we had to go out and get a handful of them last year, I think we were out on him when really maybe his development, his maturity curve, maybe those things are just not as aggressive as we would have liked them to be. So at the end of the day, it was good to hear them talk proactively about him today. We know that name has come up a lot, but yeah, it's going to vary from player to player. And us fans, the people who talk about this, we want everybody to be ready when they're ready or when we want them to. And yeah, hopefully he sticks around and continues to develop and can shock and surprise some people come bowl season, if not going into next season.
We appreciate you all being in here in the chat, and we're gonna go to someone that shares the namesake of one of our very own, that Justin Wales. And at some point during the show, that's going to be now, Justin. Can we elaborate on the news about the NIL updates? It seems like Texas' inherent NIL advantage are being drastically reduced, and I'm curious, Eric. Maybe if you can bring people up to speed on what happened today and what Justin Wales is talking about. And then you've been very, very pro NIL in terms of the way that it's positively affected Texas. Do you see this negatively affecting Texas, as Justin might think here?
Yeah, I mean, I've mentioned that Texas could potentially lose its advantage with the salary cap coming in. Justin kind of reiterated some of what I'd mentioned before. Collectives are going away. We mentioned that months ago. Before these rulings even came out, we mentioned Texas is basically ahead of the curve on that. And the reason that they're ahead of the curve is because they have a very good pulse of what's going on the political side of everything. So they have a pulse on it. And we kind of relate to our readers what's going on. So we knew collectives were going away. Yeah, I do think that this is going to reduce Texas's impact to some degree if there's a salary cap. However, they're going to be able to make up for it in ways that other schools can't, just because the market in Austin is going to bear a lot more money and opportunity for players than it will in a place like Tuscaloosa. So I do think teams are going to get around the salary cap. A lot of those teams that have traditionally used bags, under the table payments, are going to go back to that. I think that's going to be the case just to get around the salary cap. The salary cap is going to be a baseline payment structure for every player. But to get some of those recruits over the line, the 5-star defensive tackle from a backwater is going to take some hidden cash. So I think that is going to hurt Texas to some degree. However, because of the opportunity in Austin and then the fact that Texas is motivated to make NIL work in ways that other schools just simply can't, I think Texas is going to be fine. But I think they are losing an advantage to some degree, but it's going to be incumbent on them to make sure that Texas doesn't lose too much of an advantage.
And forgive me for asking this, but with a salary cap, I mean, does that bleed into the idea that now the student athletes are like full on university employees? How do they reconcile that?
No, that would be a deal breaker, I'm pretty sure, with most schools.
Sure,
you can't have that. Guys sitting out before a bowl game, a whole team sitting out.
That's my point. Yeah,
we saw that. Who was it? It was mentioned not too long ago. Michigan State, I think, threatened to sit out a game last year, and they got solved right at the last minute, and they decided to play. No, that would be a deal breaker for pretty much every school involved, outside of maybe Northwestern or Cal or something like that. I don't foresee that happening. That's going to be ruled around, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, there'll be a salary cap, and it's going to be, I think, each player's. It's not going to be every player's going to get something, but they're not all going to get the same thing, is from what I've heard.
Right.
You know me, and
Well,
I had an article in the off season where I broke down where numbers could go, and I just speculated a $15 million salary cap. And what was the Eric? Right. The number was 17 that Justin was reporting in the scoop, right?
I've heard Texas's salary has ranged between 15 and 17 throughout the recent years. Right now, it's believed that Tennessee has the highest at 18. So Texas is right there, but Texas has been smart about how they've done it, and I think they're going to continue to be smart. Where other schools go in on one or two players, Texas likes to splash it around and raise the baseline talent across the board. That's how I imagine that's how that flag football team got the best of you, Ian, having multiple good players instead of just throwing it all at one. Texas is going to remain cutting edge, but the laws of the land are not going to be nearly as favorable to Texas, but they're still going to have a lot of inherent advantages that just come with being at Texas.
That joke actually was made in our league. His grandparents were telling me that he wanted to renegotiate his NIL deal at one point, our best player. But this is going to be quite the content expansion for us at Inside Texas now that we have salary cap issues to work through in the future. That's a whole new avenue.
Hey, that's going to be fun. I love the GM aspect of putting together a recruiting class. Now we get to extend that to the entire roster. You're probably going to have to do a show on that article you wrote.
We did. We should promote it, I guess. I'll go find it in a minute.
Okay, that's great. Well, since we're talking money, we should maybe hear from our sponsor, David.
I was going to say, guys, you probably need a fiduciary financial advisor, and I've got the guy for you. His name is David McClellan with Forum Financial. He works broadly and deeply with his clients as a financial life coach, and he should know something about coaching because he won several national championships as a swimmer for the University of Texas. He specializes in financial planning and has contributed numerous articles to Kiplinger on the topic of retirement tax bombs. So contact David today to be your fiduciary financial planner and schedule a 1-hour consultation to assess your financial situations. The free consultation is available, so just give him a call. The number is 312-933-8823. That's 312-933-8823. His email is also in the description below.
So this came up, and I saw this was highlighted, Eric. So we'll throw this over to you. Maybe you can help me understand exactly what he's saying here. Is he looking at this as like they're being pretty Arch can do whatever he wants, right?
Yeah. For those that are on podcast, the question is, how will it work if someone offers an NIL deal to Arch next year that is 99% of our cap? Does he have to refuse? This is obviously an outlandish scenario. We'll take it, even though it's to the extremes here. Somebody would back channel his agent or whoever represents him and would float that. I mean, that's what would happen there. Would he have to refuse? No, he wouldn't have to refuse, but he'd go to a team that he has absolutely no other players around him, because it would be the John Travolta meme where he's just standing around looking around the room with nobody else in there. So especially a player like Arch, they're looking at being prepared to go into the NFL. They're not looking forward to college payday is going to come with the territory. They're not looking to totally cash out. They want to be developed. And that's kind of the importance of NIL and where Texas is trending. I think because they've had so much success in developing players to the NFL draft, they're going to get a bit of a transactional bonus or tax break on some of these players, because they realize once they become a starter at a certain position, wide receiver, for example, in the recent years, the last 3 years, including this one, defensive tackle, they're not going to be as greedy up front because they know they'll get developed for the real payday in the NFL.
If you're the quarterback at the University of Texas in the NIL era, the school doesn't even have to do anything for you to be able to make money off that.
Especially when your last name's Manning.
It's going to be interesting, not to go on too much of a tangent, but to Eric's point, the smart schools are going to want to use up their cap on positions that can't make money in the NIL as easily. Like, you're going to want to throw cap at linemen, offensive linemen and defensive linemen, and then shortchange the skill players, but make up for it with NIL.
Yeah, I think they're going to do a much better job of networking with local businesses and turning, really kind of reverting back to the real spirit of NIL, which is about, fair market value for their name, image, and likeness.
And there's things to understand it.
So he follows up with, what's the penalty for going over the cap? I have no idea. This is, we don't even know who's going to really institute these laws yet, or enforce these laws. It's not going to be the NCAA. We don't know who the enforcement mechanism is going to be, and that's something that Texas is working hard towards ensuring that whatever the enforcement mechanism is has teeth, because again, they want to keep everything above board. Texas is going to follow the rules. This is not going to work as well for Texas if certain schools go back to doing, they got the salary cap money that they're going to use, but then they just have a whole underground apparatus doing things the old way.
And I think, to Ian's point, the idea that these NIL deals are in existence and for maybe more high profile players. I mean, universities have NIL departments now. I mean, it may just be two people that are doing the social media and putting them in front of brands and helping them along the way. But there are also third-party groups that are helping universities with these NIL deals. So I just think that is going to grow even further into this, because as we go through this, and one of the things, the reason I brought up the employment thing, in spite of the fact I do know that it's a non-starter, is the fact that the main thrust of this has been the whole antitrust idea, right? The fact that these people, these young athletes, aren't allowed to earn money. And that's not going away. They're still going to be allowed to earn money. It's just where they get that money is the important part here. And that only so much of it can come from the university, which I think is a very distinguishing point that you brought up, Ian, is really valid. Let's go over to this game we've got coming up this week. One of the questions that's being asked quite a bit in the chat is obviously about Lagway, and I'm just curious. Billy came out today, Coach Napier came out today and said that he's a possibility. I'm just wondering how would we be preparing for this game? I would assume that Lagway is not necessarily playing this weekend. What are your thoughts on that, Ian? Because you wrote an article this week about the defense. I'm curious if you have any thoughts on the Florida offense.
I think we're going to see them try to run the ball as many times as they can get away with. I don't think – maybe Drew should comment on the nature of hamstring injuries.
Ooh.
But go ahead, Drew.
They're the worst. They just are. From the moment he grabbed his hamstring, he did not let go. So I don't know what kind of gamesmanship that is. Rare you see that. We've seen injuries and different types of bone breaks. People don't grip it. He gripped it immediately and didn't let it go for the whole time. It's just, when you think about the way he plays the game, he won't be effective in that same way, regardless of what he recovers from or what this is intended to maybe make Texas prepare for. But I also think at the end of the day, if Texas does their research, which there are ways to do research, and they find there's some level of credibility to this somehow, some way, I do think they'll be fine one way or the other, just because you're really down to quarterbacks that just, they can't do anything with them. So I do expect them to attack us in the run game. There shouldn't really be any surprises outside of the need to try to create some explosive plays through tricks. But we should be dialed up for this. Unfortunately, I really would have loved to see Lagway play. I was enjoying watching him play Saturday. That was an exciting game. He was, it's like the same thing with Lenora Sellers. If you watch this weekend, if you watch some of these young quarterbacks play, these guys who are just emerging, these are some really powerful, great athletes. So unfortunately, we won't be able to see him at DKR this week. But I think we'll be fine either way, even if there is some level of scare or possibility that he could even touch the field.
Yeah, Sark mentioned this in his press conference, and he gave the same answer that other coaches have given about preparing for Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning, is basically you prepare for the scheme. And obviously, we're going to go into the game with the knowledge that the backup Aiden Warner, the third string quarterback, is quite limited, much more limited than Lagway as a true freshman. So this game looks like a race to 11. If Texas can win 11, they'll can get to 11. They'll probably walk out with a win. But that Georgia defense was spirited. They showed a lot of heart. They were playing hard. That game continued to be worth watching after Lagway got hurt. I thought it was going to be time to change the channel. But they played, even showed some heart coming back and tying it up relatively late in the game. Defense did a good job. The defense has their own injuries as well at cornerback, which I'm not sure how ready those guys are to go. But if their cornerbacks are out, they're in even deeper trouble. But it's a shame, man. Everybody wanted to see Lagway. He's returning home. He's from Willis, right down the street from me. Great kid, great family, exciting player, exciting future. It's just unfortunate that had to happen.
So Ian, and I'm sorry, I know we're interrupting dinner time, but how would you describe the defense that we're going to be facing on Saturday? I know this is Monday. We're going to go into our deep dives. We've got all of our lives with Homer and you and Paul breaking all this down. But just what's the 30,000-foot view on what we can expect on Saturday?
They're really kind of similar to Dave Aranda defense because they brought in Ron Roberts, who used to work with Billy Napier at Louisiana, before he left so that he could work with Dave Aranda at Baylor. So like Aranda is like one of Robert's proteges. And he's the co-coordinator at Florida with the young guy that everybody sees that's like 30 years old or whatever. I'm talking the baby-faced
Austin Armstrong.
But they like to play too deep. They like to blitz their linebackers and drop their edges into coverage. They have 400-pound nose tackles, like more than one of them, I believe. They're actually kind of similar as a program to Texas in a lot of ways. Napier went in there and was like, bring me the biggest humans we can possibly get. And those are the guys that are on both of their lines. And similar schematically too. But the cornerback injuries that Eric was talking about are pretty rough. They lost probably an NFL draft pick, Jason Marshall, to injury. They lost the other starter, got injured, returning an interception against Carson Beck. I don't know what his status is, but it doesn't sound that great. It's Florida, so they have talented guys in the secondary, but it's possible that they're going to be starting 4 second-year guys, and that's not winning football to have that many young guys in the back end.
Sark raved about them. He raved about their upside, their size, physicality, length, speed. He's like, they look like us. So, they've got a lot of respect for him. Yeah, you saw Cormani McClain out there got worked on probably the key play of the game, giving up too much space to number 11, Aaron Smith. They're and they have to play the game of their life just to keep the offense in it. But yeah, Texas has a lot of advantages in this one, but Florida's going to come in and they're going to play hard. Texas is going to have to punch them in the mouth, take the wind out of them.
When you are in the middle of a remodel, you don't want the wind taken out of you.
This video is brought to you by Luxe Kitchen and Bath. Luxe has been offering high-end kitchen and bathroom remodels for 3 generations throughout the greater Austin area. With 5-star review after 5-star review on Google and Facebook, and an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau, you can put your faith in Luxe Kitchen and Bath's award-winning designers and skilled craftspeople to bring to life that dream vision of your special home. But that's not all. Luxe's all-star team provides full remodels, large additions, and even commercial build-outs as well. So call Luxe Kitchen and Bath at 833-358-LUXE today. Or visit luxekitchenbath.com to discover where quality meets luxury and begin the process of transforming your home. Get a free quote today by calling 833-358-LUXE. That's LUXE. Or by visiting luxekitchenbath.com. Link in the description.
We want you guys to join us over at Inside Texas. Use the promo code IT1 and you're going to get 2 months for $1 American, which is a really nice deal. And we highly recommend that you come join us over there at InsideTexas.com. Let's talk a little bit about this weekend, Drew. What games stuck out to you? What were some things that you were really kind of glued to this weekend?
Well, I think there was a game in South Carolina's game. I was just checking that out. Lenore Sellers was a player. I've been watching them all year. He is someone who, if he didn't get injured earlier this year, probably could have kept them on track to really be in the mix here. I mean, he's that dynamic. Just in physical as a runner too. So, and they play great defense. So yeah, I watched South Carolina. to see how that game would stack up, as well as Florida, Georgia. But yeah, that my reflection on all of this though is that Texas still has to handle Texas's business. It's fun to sit back and watch certain teams lose games when they have a ton of hype and a ton on the line and have a big road game ahead. That's fun. But you still got to handle your own business. So my thought, because as I'm watching these games, I thought I would be watching a lot more Big 12 this year. I haven't been watching this at all. I thought that I would still. I have not been watching Big 12 at all. So that's one thing that didn't happen. But what I have noticed, if I'm just being honest here, when these last 4 games with these teams, and I've seen all these teams play, Florida, Kentucky, Arkansas, and A&M, they're not going to look at the OU film or the Vandy film or even the Mississippi State film to determine how they want to test us. They're going to look at the Georgia film because they actually have players in the trenches that body for body can bang with us. Now, how they're deployed and if their assignment sound and all the other stuff won't matter. But we still have not played the gauntlet we're about to play just from physicality that's necessary in the trenches. And that starts with Florida. So we're going to see. And I honestly don't think these teams, they're going to look at the Georgia film and say, hey, we got to see if Texas is real in the trenches. So
one of the things that, the thing that they kind of came up with is this idea of more parity. I mean, do you see more parity in the SEC?
Yeah. I mean, look in the trenches. I mean, that is a difference maker. I do think, so you know what? I did watch Iowa State and Texas Tech this weekend. That game they're not playing the same game. They're just not. Now, it's still a game that was enjoyable to watch. They played good, sound defense. They're flying around. I mean, the backs are still really good in the league. They get guys in space. Yes, all of those things are great. I mean, playing great defense, making great plays. But it just starts in the trenches in this league. And that's why Florida can struggle parts of the season, but go play against Georgia, and Georgia has to play well. That's why South Carolina, once they cleaned up things and got Lenore Sellers back, they were prepared to play against anybody else in this league. And Texas cannot say to this point we've played comparable beyond Georgia, comparable talent. And so I think from where Texas has built its team to be in the trenches, yeah, there's parity. So we got to show up this week and for the next 4 weeks because it won't be all those teams are going to take the Georgia mentality and approach to this game. They're not looking at Vandy and OU and the Mississippi State film at all.
I will say Michigan is big and NFL rich in the lines, but they were not ready or skilled or fast enough at the other spots like Georgia was. So that we were maybe a little misled by the Michigan game about how ready Texas would be on a week in, week out basis to handle teams like that. But we'll see. I mean, the Georgia game, there's also reason to believe that was a little bit of a one-off. We're definitely
they look like the Georgia we saw before the Texas game that was, scattered, iffy, making mental mistakes on defense. Carson Beck. The story of the weekend to me was where the hell are the quarterbacks this year? Carson Beck has been quite disappointing. Threw another 3 picks, had a couple more that should have been picked. He's scatterbrained right now. He's making a lot of bad decisions. And their defense, they gave up the bomb. Malachi Starks lost his eyes. They did not look as assignment sound they certainly didn't look as assignment sound or even as cohesive or as energetic as they were against Texas. So that was the team that everybody had seen and thought, man, Texas is going to handle them. And of course they played the game of the year against Texas. But where are the quarterbacks? I have no idea where they are this year. Dylan Gabriel's, by far the best quarterback right now on any team that's a real contender. And then injuries this week stood out to me. Texas had, in addition to Lagway, Le'Veon Moss is out for the year. Texas A&M's talented running back. He got hurt on an impressive run. And then Taylor Green, Arkansas's quarterback, went out twice, I believe, and I'm not sure his status going forward. So Injuries reared their head. It was a good week to be on the bye and be on the couch for Texas players.
Is there moving forward with this? And I'm curious what your thoughts are, Drew, because it seems like the chatter or the talk is, look, we need to limit roster sizes and expand the length of the season, which seems incredibly counterintuitive to me. How are these guys, because injuries are a major deal, how would you prepare to take care of your body over that longer period of time?
I mean, you can only do what you can do, right? I mean, what they're doing today doesn't necessarily change with another few weeks of the season. I will say they have far more data and understanding of these guys than we ever had. I mean, they measure speed, explosiveness, dehydration, that they measure everything. So I think there's just the data that they keep on players now. They can use that data more effectively to kind of both advocate for some relief where needed, but also be able to push players and kind of know where guys are and build their rosters in a way where they can make up, where they just know that there's some injuries that there's some positions where they need to be deeper in. So I really, the process is the process. I mean, you play a game, you ice bath, wake up, you check out on all your boo-boos, your bobos, your elbows, your everything that's banged up, and you get back to rehabbing and cleaning up, and you're always going to have something that's hurt. And you just grind through Tuesday, you grind through Wednesday, you're taking care of your body every day, and you're eating the right thing and you're putting the right things in your body. I mean, it just is the process. If they make the season longer, I don't think that'll change anything. Just got to, you got to get lucky.
Having 2 bye weeks is nice, and then if they win the SEC championship, they'll have a bye week for the first round of the playoffs. So that's another reason to win the SEC championship.
Yeah, if you get that first round bye, also you get like a huge time off before that first game, but then the rounds after that you get like 10 days off between each game. So the grind of the playoffs, I mean, if you get a serious injury, it is what it is, but there it really is advantageous to get that bye, so long as you don't lose, your first game from the layover.
Who do you think is going to win the SEC at this point, Ian?
Man, I don't even know. I need to see Texas with Quinn healthier. I thought he looked healthier again against Vanderbilt, but I need to see that with Isaiah Bond and a more elaborate game plan. I need to see what Sark cooked up in the lab in the bye week to get the run game going or to try to get guys more open downfield. I just don't believe in Georgia. You don't want to play them in a one-off for the reasons that we saw, but it's Carson Beck cannot carry that team. They don't have the same run game they normally have, and they don't have Ladd McConkey and Brock Bowers.
Yeah, and they've got Ole Miss and Tennessee back to back.
The thing with Georgia that's tough, though, is, I mean, Georgia's still winning even when they play bad. Ohio State just did it. And so everybody else really has to be almost perfect, it feels, to compete with Georgia even when they're not playing perfect. Carson Beck didn't play great against us either. So it's hard for me to kind of go against Georgia at this point. They still can't afford to lose another, I don't believe. But at the end of the day, it's hard to go against them when those guys do tee it up and actually lock in, because really they've been playing a lot of games where they're still winning and they're not playing well.
Yeah, if they play Texas this weekend, you'd have to pick them to win again just on how they won the first time. But I'm not even sure they're going to make it, given that they have the teams ahead of them. Ole Miss this weekend. Ole Miss is going to score on them. And then Tennessee's defense is really damn good. If they turn the ball over, Nico's capable of making plays. I don't know, man. I think they're going to drop one against Ole Miss or Tennessee.
I think I would take Texas in a rematch if it were like this Saturday with Georgia. And I think I would make Texas my favorite, just because a healthy return Bond in that passing game. I just don't see another team with a gear that scares me. Like, you need that championship gear for those big games, and I just don't. Yeah. I don't see it on another roster, really.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm
And Ian, you believe this in spite of where our run game is?
Run game is overrated. I've always said this.
You've always said this. He has it printed on T-shirts and throw pillows around his house.
Yeah, Sark was mentioning today about how they need to get back to getting his balance back on offense. I think that the lack of balance is hurting the passing game. It's hurting the play action game. I think they need the run game for the pass game.
Yeah, Sark doesn't think it's overrated. So unfortunately, I think Sark needs it. Maybe you should let him know that he doesn't need it, Ian.
He knows. Why do you think he's dialing up all those shots all the time? The pass sets up the run.
Nope. Yeah, this guy's right. Oregon doesn't have a championship. I mean, he might be right. I don't know for sure. Oh man, but they have the best quarterback of the real contenders, and that's a force multiplier. They've got athletes on offense, and I don't think their defense is. I mean, if the offense comes to play, their defenses might be good enough.
I think whoever wins the championship is going to hit a run between now and then, where something clicks.
It has to be us, man.
Right.
There's just no reason for it. It can't be us.
Yeah, that's what I was.
I don't.
I alluded that to November being for Quinn figuring things out and then starting to hit his stride, and because out of all the quarterbacks that are not playing great right now, I think he has the most upside. Because I'm not sure Carson Beck's not coming back. I mean, he hasn't been great all year. We've seen Quinn be great this year, and I think we saw him get better between between Georgia and Vandy. Sark seems pretty optimistic based on the practices he's had. I think it's going to be Quinn too, but I would like to see that run game start to show more consistency.
We've answered this question, but I think it's worth repeating. Is obviously you want the bye, but if you don't get the bye, that 5 seed's pretty sweet. Does anybody disagree with that?
Obviously, you want Texas playing in that SEC championship game. You've got signing day on the 4th, and you've got the SEC championship game on the 7th. You want coaches recruiting through the whistle on all these high-level guys saying, hey, get ready to watch us this Saturday. Texas is on the way up. We're not even on the way up. We're back. We're playing for all the marbles. And then you want to have that chance to play for that bye week. The 5th seed is not a bad place to land. Unfortunately, if you lose that SEC championship game, you probably won't be the 5th seed. They'll probably give it to somebody else that doesn't have a loss, right? Just because they're morons. But
and they have to avoid the rematch too. You don't want the 5-1 rematch to be the SEC championship game again.
Yeah, that's a frustrating thing because it disincentivizes you to make the championship game and lose. It's ridiculous, but we'll see how it plays out.
Another thing with the 5 or 6 seed though is you get that home game in DKR in the first round, and maybe that's too late for recruiting. But it's never too late for recruiting, right? Recruiting is a 365. Right. So
yeah, it's never too late, and especially you can have the portal open up, and that'll help too.
There's an algebra question here, Ian,
Lord,
I'm going to put this to you because I know how much you hate the run game. So if Quinn throws for X yards and X touchdowns against Florida, not only does Texas win, but fan confidence for Quinn is restored. It's that last section that might be the more telling stat. What are your thoughts on that, Ian?
Yeah, I think if he had 300 yards and or 4 or more touchdowns, then everybody would be like, we're back, baby. Quinn's on top of the world. Everything's going to be fine.
It ain't about stats, man. That's not what it's about. He just had 3 touchdowns in the first half against Vanderbilt, and nobody would say that he's back.
Did he really?
Yeah.
Well, I said 4 or 5 though, Eric. So that's different than 3.
I want to see him step up in the pocket and stretch the field, take advantage of the mismatch offensive mismatches they'll have wide receiver versus their injured corners. Step up in the pocket and play confidently. I don't really care. The stats will follow.
Yep. At home, weather will be nice. Make it happen.
Yep.
I think he might though, and it could also be a mirage because Florida's so beat up in the secondary now. And if Texas picks up their pressure and Quinn's just sitting back there all day, then
that's something itself that we need to see for Texas to hit its ceiling and do better job handling pressure. Running backs picking up the blitz. So that's something we need to see going forward anyway.
It's yet to be seen since he came back against OU. I mean, we're still waiting. So at this point, the competition doesn't even matter. It's can you consistently do that?
Yeah. And with that, Drew, because we're not gonna maybe get this too much of you this weekend until maybe we get to the pregame. But what do you want to see out of Texas against this Florida game? What's going to make you feel a lot better going into the rest of the season?
I mean, go look at Florida's defense. Go watch their defense. And yes, they're banged up. And yes, that was a rivalry game. And yes, that was an emotional week. But I mean, if you heard Billy Napier's press conference today, he's not taking this week off. So yeah, I want to see how we play on offense against this defense. Vandy was not the test that Georgia was, or that this will be, at least in the trenches. So I just want to see how we're going to execute. I want to see if we can run the ball and do what we want to do running the ball, because at the end of the day, Sark wants to run the ball and run it well. Can Sark do and get what he wants out of this game plan the way he wants to? That and then it comes down to Quinn. I just want to see them come out and execute a clean game, their game plan. Sark talks about he wants to, or we want to dictate to the defense what they're doing and kind of be in control of the game plan. There's nothing stopping them right at this point. They're coming off a bye week. They're at home. They've seen the film. They know what they want to do. So it doesn't mean perfection is necessary, but I do want to see them have command of this team. There's no reason for that not to be the case.
Yeah, if they pick up the blitz and run the ball better, we'll actually get a true measurement of where Quinn is, since that Georgia game. So I think he needs to get some help from those factors, though.
Those would be better indicators also, because Florida has a big physical front on defense, and they know how to blitz. So if Texas just dominates the line of scrimmage in this game, then that's a better tell than whether or not Quinn throws for X yards or whatever, unless it's 400 yards. And then I think we should probably feel pretty good.
Well, that's the thing too. It's given all this perspective, like look at what we're talking about, right? Like Texas is playing Florida, and we're not even thinking about whether they're going to win or not. We want to see how they win. And the reason why we want to see how they win is because we expect them to be in contention for a championship, and we know what's necessary to do that. So, it's great that Sark has gotten this team to this point. Like, what we're being critical about has nothing to do with whether they're going to win this game this week. It has everything to do with the expectations we all have, is that this roster was built to win a championship, and they have the players to do so. And now we just need to see them execute a game plan that shows that they're on track to just kind of pick up some steam and keep rolling. And that's where we are.
Here's another good one too.
Yeah.
Less penalties that will sustain drives. 100, 100, 100, 100. I probably would have gone with the fifth 100 there, but they can't. Quit shooting yourself in the foot. It drives me insane. I spent all offseason bragging about how much experience there is on the roster, and then they start getting all these stupid penalties. A lot of them, there's no excuse for them. They worked on that. Sark said they mentioned it quite a bit, that they worked on the pre-snap penalties, and also the ones where maybe technique is breaking down on the offensive line, or bad technique in the secondary, not getting the head around in time, that sort of thing. So hopefully we see improvement. But you get excited about having an experienced team. You think that they're not going to shoot themselves in the foot, but they've been taking dead aim.
Do we know what's the point spread in this game? Speaking of expectations.
Oh, somebody in the chat should help us out on that. I'm not even sure.
And a half when I last saw it.
What was it?
17.5 when I last saw it.
That's the joke I made when Lagway went down.
I thought you actually knew it. I was like, damn, that was pretty.
Yeah, that's funny, because I was thinking 17. I almost put that in my article the other day, and I was like, maybe I'm way off on that, so I'm not going to, because I don't really follow that.
It's up to 21 now. It's up to 21.
Ooh.
Yeah, because they're going to score 10 points.
Yeah, still.
Drew, this is a question, and this again just mid-season stuff. How does does the team address penalties midseason in practice? Is it just do it in the film room, or how does that actually get addressed?
I mean, you got to look at film and see the cause first. I mean, some of these penalties were, the defensive line doing a shift and guys are jumping. Other penalties are it's communication. It really comes down to what's the cause. So going back and looking at penalties at home, penalties on the road. I mean, that's what makes the difference is looking at what the cause is and drilling it down into those individual players. But that's where communication and connection kind of comes into play because it's not just, hey, don't do it.
Right.
It's just not that simple. It really is. You
Sure.
can get as specific as repping. Like, hey, you have to sit tight until it's time until you see the ball snap. And so you just got to know what each player's trigger is and coach it out of them. You really do. Just coach it out of them.
Yeah, pull them and play somebody else. I would love to see that happen a little bit more often, but
Me too. That's the way to do it.
that's been one of my
Is there a particular
issue.
Why do you think that doesn't happen, Eric? Is it depth? I mean, why doesn't that happen?
I think he tries to keep confidence instilled in his players. I don't know. It's kind of like when you'll see a player drop a ball, he'll go right back to him the next series. I think it has something to do with that. But there have been way, 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 way too many pre-snap penalties going back their entire tenure here. Year 4 and year 3 for a number of these offensive linemen, year 4 for some of them, year 5 for some of them, and we just should not be seeing that.
Yeah, you
Well,
can't
this
be
is
in that way.
no. Well, and here's a question, and thank you to Roaster for this. Obviously, the Toyota minivan fund for Ian is really starting to add up there. But this is the $1 million question. At this point in the season, do you see Campbell and Williams return? What are your thoughts on that, Eric?
Yeah, I think Campbell for sure. Based on conversations I've had recently, Williams is going to come down to how the NFL sees him because he has tantalizing size and athleticism that has people raving. They might still take him in the first round just because he's so rare. And then at that point, I would think he would still leave. Right now, his tape and consistency is not what you normally see with a first rounder, but he is somewhat of an anomaly with his movement skills and size. Somebody might take him, talk him into the first round and stash him for a year just because they feel he has that much upside. Tape isn't there to be a first rounder, but the ability is, of course. Hopefully they can coax him back with NIL. And you have a lot less concerns about your offensive line if you get both those guys back. Right now, I'd say Campbell's much more likely. Williams, Sark said right now he's viewing this as they have half the season remaining. If Williams really turns it on over the second half, and hopefully they are playing up until January 20th, and he plays well, he's going to be gone because he doesn't need a huge sample size of good play for teams to move on him.
Do you think, Eric, that part of the pitch to bringing him back would have to be moving him to left tackle, or doesn't matter?
I don't think that matters. I don't really think that matters for the NFL. They'll play you just wherever they'll put you in a camp, and if you can play left tackle, they'll put you there. Maybe it would highlight his versatility a little bit more, or that it'd show comfort because sometimes guys are moved much better on one side of the ball than the other, and he's played right tackle pretty much the entire time. So maybe that would increase value. I'm not sure. I think he really just needs to come back and play more fundamentally sound. Really, he's a 3-year talent, but a 4-year player.
He'll have some tests in these next few weeks. They say that's the thing that I think is going to be different on the back half of this season because there's just a different level of player.
That's the thing. He has the athleticism and size to match up with those guys on one play, and then the next he has a fundamental or technical breakdown. And really, I don't think he's got the tape in the run game that you expect to see out of somebody with his size. He's got the athleticism and movement skills, but the tape is not following yet.
Yeah.
This is a question again to do with depth more than anything. But Eric, depending on how many O-line would leave, what for us if the right guy was there, do you think Sark and Flood would portal an offensive lineman?
I know so. Yeah, I've written about that a few times on IT that this would be the first time you actually see them looking at the portal this season. They prioritize experience. They were excited to have four starters back, and then Cam being a 3-year player isn't necessarily like a an inexperienced player, even though he doesn't have a ton of snaps. But yeah, I do expect them to look at the portal. If anything, they need more competition. But yeah, I think they're going to look. I feel confident about that. Now they are still circling on Michael Fasusi, and if they get Michael Fasusi, that's not going to be cheap. That's going to have to come from somewhere. It'll probably come from portal coffers. But I think they'll take at least one offensive lineman and maybe two.
Which positions do you think? Like, we're assuming all 5 are gone, right?
If you assume, Campbell's coming back. I'm assuming he's back at this point. So you would have, I think Cole Hudson will be your starting center. I think Neto will be your starting left guard. And I think Gooseby will be your starting left tackle. And if they don't get anybody, Brandon Baker will be your right tackle if Cam leaves. But they're going to bring in at least one portal guy. I would not be surprised by 2. I don't think Spencer Hogan here says center. No, I think Cole Hudson would be a really good center. And I think, I think that would improve Cole's draft chances to show the ability to both play guard and center. I think he's got the intelligence from it. He's moonlighted there and practiced quite a bit in his time at Texas. I think he'd be your starter unless Daniel Cruz makes a big jump this offseason. Cruz looks the part. I don't think he's quite comfortable yet, but again, he could have a big spring. Right now, I think Cole Hudson would be the starting center. But of course, if he's not the starting center, he's going to play somewhere. Otherwise, he's going to portal, right? If Campbell comes back, maybe he's your left guard. But then Neto's probably going to portal. So
they'd be looking for a tackle in the portal.
Always looking for tackles. You're going to take it if you can get it. Yeah, but if they want to if they feel like one of the guards is underperforming and they want Cole at center, like maybe Neto's not playing as well as they'd like, I think they'd take a guard as well. But they feel comfortable with Gooseby next year. What about Connor Robertson?
Thoughts on Robertson? Yeah.
Yeah. He's not going to, I don't think he would start at center ahead of Cole Hudson. Not much else to say.
Well, we appreciate everybody being here. We're trying this new time zone. We really do appreciate you guys taking the time and certainly the questions. As we go out today, go ahead and check out InsideTexas.com. It's IT1. That's 2 months for $1. That's going to get you through most of the rest of the season. As Sark has said, we are at the halfway point. Hopefully, we are playing until late January. But we've got a new bumper to take you out. It's a little bit sexier than normal.